Hey everyone. Well, if you're like me, you're a creature of habit. I thrive off routine. I need it. And I think a lot of us are at very least feeling out of rhythm. Being out of rhythm is very stressful, so if you're feeling tense, I've been thinking on a few things for myself, and maybe these thoughts will help you as well. We tend to think that panic is a phenomenon, that it's extraordinary and uncommon, when in fact, when you consider the fragility of the human psyche and how we distrust each other in society, the reality that we live in as peaceful a society as we do is really the real phenomenon, especially if you take in the scope of history. We've all had those instances in our lives where we've made a wrong turn. We're looking at the map, we think we're supposed to turn here, and we enter into an unknown territory. And when we enter into the unknown, especially when we're surprised by it and we didn't expect it coming, and we're so certain that we were supposed to be one place and we're another, our natural physiological responses kick in. We have an adrenaline rush, the fear instincts kick in, fight or flight. Going into an unknown territory, physically so, is not the only way, though, we can feel lost and disoriented. When our schedules are thrown off, we enter into a temporal zone, a space that is unknown. And as creatures of habit, when we're lost, without our routines or without our bearings with our local markers, because we thought we were in one place and we're not the other, what do? Well, if you're in the woods and you're lost, you're spinning around looking for some bearing. You're trying to get yourself out of that fear that results in fight or flight, where we attack one another and do crazy things. And we are going to be doing that right now as we're stressed out. We're going to be right now disoriented. We're going to be spinning around looking for some bearing. And if we don't find it, and we remain in fight or flight, well, we're going to resort to panic. We're going to mistreat one another and ourselves. And people on the frontier could not find their bearing using local markers because they didn't know the area. They knew they had something more that was a bit more certain for them. They could raise their head up and look at the stars. This would at very least give them a sense of direction. And if you're a Christian, you have a way of finding your bearing as well in time. See, right now we're thinking about time very finitely. We're looking at it in this limited right now space, but we live in eternity, so we have a long way to gaze off. And if we look at the Christian story, what does it tell us? It orients us, telling us that we're in a broken world. So no wonder you feel disoriented. But what do you do when you feel disoriented? You set your attention on God. And Lent is this great time to orient ourselves in a disorienting world. Lent's a time to ask hard questions that keep us in fear and bondage. That's why we start off by reminding ourselves in Lent that we are mortal. And so we have to face these hard realities. And if we'll explore them with God, instead of letting our fear give us anxiety, we take these to God, and instead of being locked in fear and blaming each other, we find Him. Well, He give us bearing. If we do not ask God, and we don't allow Him to give us a fixed point of reference, His voice, we'll remain in fear and we're going to lash out at one another. So Lent is a time where the church asks itself to slow down, to recalibrate, so that we are oriented in the world properly and we're oriented in time properly. We're trying to not be so dependent on the right now and every day. So this is why our routines being broken might not be such a bad thing. It helps us find our bearings outside of those things and on the eternal. We need habits, but perhaps there are some habits we can build right now in our lives that when everything else goes away, we have these things as our guide. Maybe like things like prayer and meditation and fasting. They can calibrate us. So let's let God in Lent reset our hearts to peace. And by facing the unknown with God, He picks up our head, He gives us perspective, and we know, even though we don't know immediately what's going on around us, we know the direction we're heading. It's consistent, and it's with God. And His voice becomes the way we chart the unknown. So let's slow down, let's breathe, let's not resort to fear or panic or anger, and use this time for our Lenten practices. Be blessed.